Doors are closing. Things are getting rolling. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am so excited to be here. This is my first time ever making it out to NDC, first time ever coming to Australia, so thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And today we're talking about adding AI to your apps using machine learning as a service. So my name is Brandon Minninck. I work as a developer advocate at Microsoft. And you'll notice there's a couple things at the bottom of these slides. You'll see these periodically throughout the session. On the right-hand side here, this is a landing page I put together just for you all today. So make sure, at some point, take out your phone, grab a picture of this link, bookmark it, do whatever, because in there is where you can find the slides, you can find my contact information, you can also find all the fun stuff we're doing today. So we have a lot of live coding demos, there's a lot of open source apps that I put together just for you. They're all linked in that link below. And if you want to learn more, if you're feeling good at the end of the session, you want to dive deeper into it tonight, there's also links there to take you to the resources to help you get started. So make sure to grab that. That's all for you. And at the other side, that's my Twitter handle. That's the best way to get in contact with me. My email is at the bottom of this page. I'll probably never see it if you email me. I hate it. I wish email didn't exist. But my direct messages are always open on Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. As a developer advocate, my job is literally to help you. So if you have any questions, even if I don't know the answer, I'll get you in touch with somebody that does. Help you get past that roadblock. And worst case scenario, we can work together with the product teams. If maybe there's something you need, maybe there's a feature you're looking for, we can help that get implemented for you. So welcome, everybody. So let's jump right into it. We are going to kick it off with the demo app. So I have a game that I made for you today called Face Off, and it pits two players head to head. So 2 players means I need 2 volunteers. So 2 volunteers, who wants to come up, try your hand at Face Off? All right, come on down. One more. Don't be shy. This is only being recorded, broadcasting live. All right, come on down. Let's give them a hand. Thanks for joining me on stage, guys. What's your name?
Gary.
Gary. Brandon, nice to meet you. And?
Peter.
Peter.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming. So actually, join me on this side, because we're going to use the phone over here. And let's see. Let's bring it up on the big screen so everybody can see it with us. And this one right here. Okay. So let's say, Gary, you'll be player 1. So let's punch that in. And Peter will make you player 2. And let's see. So Gary, I'll hand you the phone. I'll step off to the side. You're the ones running the show now. So Gary, go ahead and tap the start button. And we see at the top, it says happiness. So what Face Off does, it's going to pit Gary against Peter to see who can make that emotion best. So Gary's already hit the take photo button, so go ahead and say okay. And you are going to take the happiest selfie that you can imagine. All right, looking good. And let's see what you get. 67%, okay. Not bad. Peter, why don't you give it a shot? Peter's happy face, I love it. Yeah, go ahead and tap that use photo button. Let's see how we do. 66%. So close. Well, I'll tell you what, let's call that a practice round. You guys were nice enough to come up here, try it out. Didn't even know what you were getting into. So yeah, let's tap that reset button and this is the round for all the marbles. We got surprise. So Gary, let's see your best surprise face.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be as good as Peter's.
That's looking pretty good. No face detected.
It must be the Peter.
That's all right. If you want to hit the reset button, we could try it again.
Try again.
All right, sadness this time. Looking very concerned. I like it. Ooh, no face detected again.
Do you want me to do it further away from my face, or?
You might be right. It might be the beard. Might be looking for the jawline. But, I mean, it worked for the happy photo. So, yeah, let's give it one more shot. Scared face. I like it. Zero. Well, I'll tell you what. Actually, tap on that 0% real quick, Peter. Let's see what we actually got. Oh, well, that's your surprise face. We're just playing the wrong category. All right, Peter. Well, you can't lose, but it's a low bar to beat. Let's see if you can get past 0% for your scared face. That looks good. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tie. So we have 2 winners of this year's NDC Sydney Face-Off Challenge. Let's give them a hand. Thanks so much for coming. Helping me out.
I'm actually interested to know what Peter.
Oh yeah, let's check it out. Whoop.
Neutral.
Mostly neutral. That's okay.
Good job.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining me on stage. So I'm a mobile app developer. A lot of the demos we'll see today are apps that I've written in C# using Xamarin. And I'm kind of curious, how many folks in the audience here would consider themselves machine learning experts? Any experts on machine learning? Okay, that's all right. Me neither. And I get it, because artificial intelligence is hard. This typically takes people, they get PhDs in computer science. They specialize in this field, and it's incredibly niche. But I'm a mobile app developer. When I start studying artificial intelligence and it gets into talking about matrices and multiplication and training models and algorithms, I'm done. I understand it's cool, but not for me. And so I've never actually written any machine learning algorithms. I've never trained a model in my life. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, wait a minute. Face-Off definitely had facial recognition. It does. And that probably uses some sort of machine learning, and it does. But I didn't have to actually write any code for it. Because we have these tools, these machine learning as a service. All I did for that, I just upload a photo to the Face API. So the Face API is part of Azure's Cognitive Services, and literally, all you have to do is upload a photo, and it comes back with these results. So by uploading the photo, it automatically detects any faces it finds in the picture, gives you the location where it found it, so you can identify which ones it's talking about, and then for each face, points out the emotion scores. And so in this case, we get back anger, contempt, disgust, all these different scores. And if you look at the scores on the right, those actually all add up to 1. Now, it might not look like it because that anger says 5 point whatever, but it's actually e to the -8. So if you remember, that means times 10 to the -8. So that's not a score of 5.1 for anger. That's a score of what? 0.0000005. And so what that's saying is there's a very low likelihood that there's any anger detected in the photo, and yeah, I agree with that. And so as we go down, we see at the bottom, surprise, 0.995. Now, these numbers are what those machine learning experts, they call them confidence intervals, but I just call them percents. So a score of 99.5% for this photo for surprise, yeah, I'd say it nailed it. And so instead of having to hire a team of machine learning experts, have them build models or build and write algorithms and train models, all we had to do was upload a photo to a REST API. So I know we didn't have too many folks in here that are machine learning experts, but how many of us can hit a REST API? Yeah. And so with these services, you've all essentially become machine learning experts too, because we can add these so easily to our apps. So Face API, this is what we're using in Face-Off, and that's in Azure's platform. But there's also Google Cloud Platform. So maybe you're already using Google Cloud. Well, they have it too. There's very similar services in both. And just like we saw on the Face API on Azure, we see it identifies the faces in the photo. Slightly different for the emotion scores. It kind of gives you a score of very likely, somewhat likely for the emotions, but same. And these are all tools that we can add in to our apps. So with Microsoft Cognitive Services, what the team has done is essentially commoditize artificial intelligence. We've taken what was science fiction 10 years ago. Think back to those sci-fi movies, right, where somebody would unlock a vault by saying a secret passphrase or open a door by scanning their face using facial recognition. 10 years ago, that was really hard to do. You had to hire teams of machine learning experts. You had to pay them a lot of money to build all these models. But now, they've essentially become commonplace. And our users have also come to expect that. Think about that. So I have the iPhone 10. I literally use my face every day to unlock my phone. I can say, hey Siri at any time, and it'll pick it up. And it doesn't just pick it up for anybody. It picks it up for my voice. So you have speaker recognition, you have face detection just in our devices, and it's kind of become the norm. And so this is what users are starting to expect in our app. So what's nice is instead of having to become machine learning experts, we can leverage these services. So we see all the way on the left side there, vision. This is computer vision. Computer vision is detecting things in a photo. This is really easy for us to do. We look at pictures every day. We can tell if there's a chair in there. We can tell if that's a tree. But for computers, this is incredibly hard to do. And computer vision does that for us. So computer vision is actually what we're using. That's part of the Face API. And it can do things like face detection, face recognition, emotion detection. It can tell if there's certain objects in the photo, so common objects, like maybe you want to look for an apple or a fruit or a plant. It can even parse text. You can upload a picture from a book, and it'll send that back to you as a string. So crazy powerful stuff. And then we have speech. Speech is super similar, but for audio. So I can upload an audio file. It'll give that back to me as a text file, parse out the conversation. You can do speaker recognition. Language, this can tell you what is the intent. So I can upload a couple pages from a book and it'll tell me what's the topic, what are we talking about? It can tell me, is this happy, is this sad? Knowledge takes that a step further. Knowledge is interacting that with more natural language, bringing in chatbots. We're seeing these come in a lot of places. A lot of it's just because it's cheaper to have a chatbot than necessarily a team full of customer service folks. But what's also surprising is on the flip side, it's improving customer satisfaction. Folks would much rather say, hey, HR bot, where do I go to update my tax form? Instead of having to click around on a page, you're given that link directly. And yeah, if you need support, they still have a human somewhere behind that to help you out. Search. Everything you do in Bing is also exposed via cognitive services. So if you want to add a custom search to your app, you can do that with the Search API. Or if you just want to use the Bing spell checker, you can do that too. And then this one down here at the end, this is labs. I don't even know anything what's going on here. These are the top secret projects that the team's working on. So just know that there's even more of these coming down the road, and all of those have super secret code names. Again, I don't know what Project Prague means, but I'm sure it's going to be cool. And so you can see under each tier, there's all these different services available to us. And so these are all in Azure, in Microsoft Cognitive Services. And again, we've essentially commoditized artificial intelligence. We made it so anybody can add artificial intelligence to their apps. And on the Google Cloud side, also super similar. So if you're already using Google Cloud, they have very similar offerings. So computer vision, computer speech, they actually leverage the Google Translate services for if you want to do language translation services. You can leverage the YouTube video intelligence to parse information from videos that you upload. And then even the Cloud ML is where you can actually get into training models and doing crazy stuff like that. And again, tons and tons of services available to us. So I wish we had more time today. We don't. And we're nearing the end of the day, and we all want to get out and go to happy hour. So what I've done, I've selected a few to show you today. And again, all of these demos we're going over, they're all open source. You can find the code at the link below. So make sure to grab that. And so let's dive back into the Face API. So if you've never driven for Uber, you might not know that the drivers actually use a different app. They have a slightly different app than the Uber Riders app. And anytime a driver launches the app and logs in, they enter their username and password just like we would. But then they're also asked to take a picture. And this is just to verify that the driver is who they say they are. And this is critical, right? Because think about just 10 years ago, 2008. In the year 2008, who in here would have gotten into a car with a stranger? Yeah, nobody. And that's literally because our parents told us growing up, never get into cars with strangers. Like, not even if they have candy, don't do it. And so when the creators of Uber came up with the idea for ride sharing, they said, well, we're going to create a company based around getting into cars with strangers. They literally got laughed out of the room by investors because people said, you're crazy. Nobody's going to trust a stranger, let alone get into a car with them. And so they quickly realized they have to do a lot of security. So when you apply to be a driver, they do the common things like quick background check, make sure you don't have a criminal history, make sure you're a safe driver, make sure you have insurance, you own the car that you say you own. And that's all well and good, but they found before they started adding this facial recognition that folks were just handing out their logins, right? Like what was preventing me from giving my brother-in-law, who's got 10 speeding tickets, my login, and then we just share the cost, right? So Uber actually started using the Face API from Microsoft Cognitive Services in their app to make sure that that driver is who they say they are, and that way you can feel comfortable knowing you're going to get safely where you need to go. So when I saw this, I was like, man, that is so cool. Essentially using your face as a form of two-factor authentication. And so I was like, wonder how hard that would be. So tried it out, and I've got another sample app here. Bring up this one there. Looking good, guys. And so put together this app. Let's clear out some of that. There we go. So this is essentially just a login page. But it's a login page similar to Uber's. It's going to use two-factor authentication. But that 2FA is my face. So let's give this a shot. Let's enter a username. Let's type in Brandon. And a password. Let's say test 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't think I've made a username Brandon yet. So if I go to login, it should yell at me. Okay, good. So it says username, password invalid. And so let's head over to the sign up page where we'll create that username. So let's put in Brandon again. And let's put in test 1, 2, 3, 4. And now if I go to tap this save user button at the bottom, it yells at me. It says photo required for facial recognition. So, okay, so we'll take the photo here. Looking good. And what this is doing right now is uploading that photo to the Face API. And the only difference from what we were just doing with Face Off is I've included that tag Brandon with it as my username. And so literally with that click of the button and just hitting a REST API, we've trained a model to recognize my face and associate it with my username. So let's check it out. Let's see if this works. So I'll save the user. Success. Great. And so let's tell you what, let's make sure security's good. We'll try a bad password first. Okay. So bad passwords still get yelled at. But if I put in my super secret password, test 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm greeted with the camera. So we take a photo. And what that just did was send that photo up, and it literally asked the Face API, or my Face API. It said, hey, do you have any matches? And obviously it said, yep, we've got a match right here. And it said, okay, cool. Well, I'm trying to log in Brandon. What's the tag on that face? Brandon, cool, let him in. Now, let's see, I know you might be thinking, well, yeah, it's a conference, it's probably just a demo app. This is actually doing it. So if I type in, let's type that in again. Let's do password test, and we'll zoom in on somebody. Let's see how our zoom goes. Give me a smile, sir. Looking good. All right. Let's use that photo. And we get an error. So the face is not recognized. So literally, with that one photo, we didn't have to learn machine learning. We didn't have to train any models ourselves. We just send it up to the cloud, say this username is Brandon, and it's already recognized my face. Now, obviously one photo, that's not great. If anybody knows anything about machine learning, the more data you have, the better the algorithms and the better predictions that get. So when you go to add this to your app, probably have the user take a couple photos. I want to say the Uber Drivers app has them take 5 or 6 from different angles and says, this one from the left, this one from the right, just to get a little bit bigger data set so it gets more accurate. But with just a couple lines of code, we've added our face as two-factor authentication to our login page. Think about those apps that you work on. Is there sensitive information in there that password could get compromised? Even things like using SMS, using a text message for two-factor authentication, that's also easily hacked because people have found you can spoof phone numbers too. So what better way to do it than with your face? Because I only got one of them, and it's not going anywhere. Well, hopefully. So that's the facial recognition app. And
what if someone points out the camera to a photo?
Right, so good question. So just to repeat it so the folks watching the stream can hear it, the question was, what if somebody holds up a photo of me and takes that picture? Awesome point. So this is why we don't want to replace our login screen with it and rather use it as two-factor authentication. Because, right, we're just uploading a photo. So if somebody went to maybe my Facebook profile and snapped that picture, it might work. It might not, but yeah, we still want to have the password there. So it's not necessarily as in-depth as, say, that iPhone X sensor, because that's actually building the 3D map. But we'll see in a little bit just how few lines of code it takes. We can add this to our app super easily. And yeah, as long as we keep it as a form of two-factor authentication, we're good to go. Now, I don't have a demo, but just building on your question, for the speaker recognition, now that one is actually good enough to replace a login. So the speaker recognition is, I guess, a little bit harder to spoof from what I'm told. But do we want to risk it? I would keep that password there. That would help me sleep better at night. Another cool one, Text Analytics API. So this is the Text Analytics API on the Azure cloud, and this is doing sentiment analysis. So who here has ever gotten an email from their boss like this? I hope you find time to actually get your reports done today. Right? We've all been there. This was an actual email I got a couple weeks ago, and this email came in, and I freaked out. I immediately started worrying because this came in on a Thursday. These reports were due on the next day on the Friday, and wondering, man, is my boss mad at me? Did I miss the deadline? Am I late? And so, definitely freaked out for a little bit. Once I calmed down, I was like, you know what? What if I just upload the sentiment analysis on the Text Analytics API, and let's see what it says. So I did that, and it came back with these results. So I got back a score of 0.776, or 77.6%. And what does that mean? Well, the way the scoring system works, 0 would be the meanest, angriest email you can imagine. 1, super happy. And 0.5 right in the middle, or 50%, that's just basically neutral. So it's neither happy, neither sad. It's kind of like saying the weather outside is 14 degrees. And here, we got a 0.776 or 77.6%. So my boss wasn't mad at me. This is actually an encouraging email. And I'm so glad I did this because I actually met with him later that day. And had I not done this, I would have gone in super defensive. I would have been worried about how he's about to yell at me and this isn't going to be any fun. But when I met with him later that day, he actually said, yeah, he's like, I know you've been slammed, had a lot of work in front of you and just was hoping you were able to find the time. And as you might have already guessed, Google Cloud Platform, very similar service. They call it the Natural Language API. And when we upload this email to their sentiment analysis, we get a score of 0.2. Now you might be thinking, well, that's way off, but their scoring system's just a little bit different. So on the Natural Language API, it actually goes from -1 to 1, where -1, super angry, super mad, +1, super happy. So again, score of 0.2, that's on the right side of happy. And so when I was thinking about this, I was kind of impressed just how much this just improved my day, and started thinking about, well, how else could I use these? How else could I leverage these in my apps just to make my day that much better, right? I'm not trying to solve world hunger. We're not going to change the world, but maybe it can help me stress out a little bit less. And what I was thinking about is, every morning I wake up, I turn off the alarm on my phone, and I flip to the news, and I enjoy reading the news. I like what's going on. It's always fun to see, what did Trump mess up today, and just kind of staying up with the current events. But what I found is when I do that, I start reading sad stories or angry news articles, and it just ruins my day. I don't want that. I want to start my day off on the right foot. I want to be a happy day. Maybe later on lunchtime, once we're going, I can start checking out all these crazy articles. And so what I want to do together with you today is just that. I have an app that I've made. I made it to pull all the top stories off of Hacker News. So if you've never heard of Hacker News, it's just a news website that hosts all these tech articles. So if you want to know latest, greatest in the tech world, you can go to hackernews.com. And so I have this app here that I pull up every morning to check out those stories. And it's nothing crazy. Like, I can pull to refresh, it'll give me the latest, greatest stories, and I can click on any of them and it takes me to the article so I can read them. Great. So what if we added some sentiment analysis in here so that I could know if this was an angry, sad article before even having to click on it? So let's jump into some code and let's check this out. So the first thing we want to do is we're gonna head to the Azure portal. Let's open up a new window there. There we go. All right, Wi-Fi's working. So we're gonna go to the Azure portal and we're gonna create a new resource. Now, if you've never used Azure before, well, actually, you're in luck because that landing page actually has a free $200 credit to help you get started. Or even if you have used Azure, just create a new account with a different email address, get the free money. But in Azure, it calls everything a resource. So if you were to maybe want to create a SQL database in the cloud, maybe you want to create an API in the cloud, those are just called resources in Azure. So as you can probably guess, I just come right here to create a resource because the text analytics service, also a resource. And I come down here to AI machine learning. And right here we have the text analytics. So pretty easy to sign up for it. We just gotta give it a name. We can name it whatever. Doesn't have to be unique. So let's see. Let's just call this let's say NDC Sydney 2018. You select whatever Azure subscription you wanna spin it up on. Pick your location. We'll stick with Australia East. That's probably the closest. And then you grab a price. You select your pricing tier. So what's cool with all these cognitive services, they all have a free tier. So not only do you have $200 credit to check it out and get started, but you don't even have to pay for it because you have a free tier here, and you can see that you get 5,000, right here, 5,000 transactions per 30 days. So these are what I use in all my apps. The ones that at least I don't publish to the App Store, kind of ones just I make for fun, because I'm never going to hit 25,000 API calls in 30 days, at least not by myself. But I wanted to bring this up just to show you something for when you do get started. If we look over here at this is the cheapest paid tier, the S0, and it has a line item here that doesn't exist on the free tier. And I want to point this out. Let's see if we can zoom in so we can all read it in the back. It says overage transactions. So what that means is you get 25,000 transactions every 30 days when you're on this tier. But if you go over, Azure charges you a whopping extra $3 for another 1,000 transactions. So super cheap service. They're not trying to nickel and dime you. This is here so that your service doesn't shut off. Because if you look to the left, you'll notice what's missing on the free tier is that line item right there. So I wanted to highlight this to you because when you do start playing around with these and you want to maybe ship your app to the App Store, add these to your website, make sure to at least jump on the S0, the cheapest tier, because if your users go over that, 5,000 transactions per 30 days on the free tier, well, API just cuts you off. On that 5,001st transaction, all of a sudden your app's not going to work, you're going to get a 1-star review, or you're going to get angry posts, and we don't want any of that. So keep that in mind. But what's also cool with these pricing tiers, you can change them whenever you want. You're not locked into it. You don't have to predict how much you'll need. You can always check back in, see what the usage is, turn them up, turn them down, whatever you want. So that being said, let's just grab the S0 tier. We'll say select here. There we go. And then the last option is just to create a resource group. It's like we said, everything in Azure is called a resource. And what you can do is you can put those resources into folders or resource groups. So if you're building an app that's using, maybe it's got a SQL database, maybe it's got an API, maybe it's got a website hosted, you can all put that essentially in the same folder, which Azure calls resource groups. So we'll just name this one NDC Sydney. Why not? And we'll click create. And so right now, Azure is spinning up my custom text analytics API just for me. So let's give that a minute to spin up. Shouldn't take more than a few seconds, hopefully. All right, so there we go. So let's jump over to the resource. It takes us straight to this quick start page where it gives us literally a 1, 2, 3. Step 1, grab your keys. Step 2, make an API call to the endpoint. Step 3, enjoy coding. So it's literally that easy. And what's also nice here is you can get all the API references right from this link. So if we jump into that, I can show you real quick what this API is going to expect in our request and also what it sends back in the response. So for the sentiment analysis, if I scroll down a little bit, all that info is here that we need. And what's cool about this is, again, this is just an API. Like, yes, I work at Microsoft. Yes, I like to code in C#, but if you like to code in Ruby or Python or JavaScript, whatever, as long as you can hit a REST API, you can interact with these. So it is totally framework agnostic, language agnostic, literally just a REST API. So it tells us, here's what we need in the headers. So we want to include our API key in the header. And this is what the request body looks like. So nothing too crazy, but we have to submit a list of documents. And so what's nice about this is we don't have to make, maybe we are uploading some pages from a book. That book's 300 pages. You're thinking to yourself, okay, great, that's 300 API calls, and I only get a certain amount of API calls per month. Nope. You can actually batch all those together and upload them at the same time, one API call. So in each document, all we have to do is identify what the language is. You can see here, there's a bunch of different languages supported: English, French, Spanish, Espanol. We give a unique ID. Now, the unique ID can be whatever we want. We just have to remember it, because when we get the response back, that unique ID is going to be tied to the sentiment score And then, like we expect, we include the text. So like, hello world, this is some input text I love. And then, when we get the response back, just like we expect, it gives us a score for each ID. And remember, that score of 1 is super happy, 0 is super angry, 0.5, somewhere in the middle, totally neutral. So that's literally it to interact with this. And so let's add that to our Hacker News app. So what we want to do, we want to grab the keys. And I've gone ahead of time and created this constants class right here. So I'm going to drop my API key in here. And the other thing I want to grab is the base URL. So we can get that from the overview page. It gives us the API endpoint. And really, I don't need all of it. I just need to let it know that we're talking to the Australia East data center. And what I also did before we got started, I added in, let's get this a little bigger, there we go. Added in this NuGet package here. So if you're not familiar with C# NuGet packages, they're just SDKs or libraries that we can download. If you're a JavaScript person, same thing as NPM or CocoaPods if you do iOS stuff. And so what the Cognitive Services team has done for us, they've put together this text analytics NuGet package, and all it does is create a wrapper for that API call. Because as we know, we've all had to hit APIs. There's some boilerplate code we got to write. Like in C#, that means newing up an HTTP client, making a post request, adding some stuff to the headers. And so what's nice with this, they've kind of done all that boilerplate code for us. Now, if you don't want to use it, that's fine. You don't have to. But I've added it in. We'll see how much easier it just makes our life for this app here. So let's jump over to, let's see, let me make sure I copied that in. Yep, that looks good. All right, so here is the code that runs when I do a pull to refresh. So on that Hacker News app, anytime I pull to refresh or anytime the app launches, it executes this execute refresh command method. And all this method's doing is hitting the Hacker News API to get the top 20 stories, and then showing those on the UI. So what's cool is right in between here, we can add in some code to do a little bit of machine learning. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a for each loop, and I'm going to say var story. So for each story in the top story list, let's do some code. Let's write some code. And I know what you might be thinking, okay, why am I going through this serially one at a time? There's a better way to do it. We just talked about batching them, and you're right. Don't do it like this for your production app. We're just kind of keeping it simple for the sake of the demo. But that finished app that you'll find linked on the landing page, that actually has all the best practices. It's got everything happening in batches and background threads, so make sure to check that out. But for here, we'll keep it simple. So what we want to do, we've got to create our API client. And again, in that NuGet package, in that SDK, they've given us a text analytics client. And the text analytics client is essentially what's going to communicate back and forth with the API on our behalf. So the client just needs to know our credentials, so our API key. So let's add that in there. And this, as you can guess, just needs the actual string constant. So constants, sediment key, there we go. And the only other thing we need to add to the API client so it knows where to talk to is that base URL. So let's grab that. Let's see, constants, base URL. Okay, so we have our client. This is what's going to communicate back and forth with the API on our behalf. And now what we need to give it some sort of input. So let's create an input. And that SDK provides what they call a multi-language input. So this is the same thing we saw when we were looking at that JSON request earlier. And as you can probably guess, it just takes in a language. So we'll put in English. We'll give it a unique ID of a hard-coded 1. And we'll just say pass in the story's title for the text that we're going to analyze. So now we just need to create the request that we're going to send off to the API. And again, that SDK is done for us. We have a multi-language batch input. And as you can probably guess, that takes in a list of these multi-language inputs. So if we were doing this the right way, I would upload all 20 stories at the same time, but we'll keep it simple. That helps make sure I don't make any typos. And so for here, we'll just add in that one single input. Cool. And so now we've got our client that talks to the backend. We've got our request to add to it. So we can get the response. So we'll say response equals await API client sentiment async. And this just needs that request. So that's it. This code has gone out to the Text Analytics API. It's done the machine learning on its side, and it's come back with the results. And now we can just assign that to our story. So let's grab our story here, and let's say the title sentiment score. It's equal to that response. And if you remember from the JSON response, it gives you a list of documents. But again, we only gave it one, so let's just grab the first one. And we'll just choose its score. And there you go. So with about, 10 lines of code, we've now added sentiment analysis. We've now added machine learning to our app. So let's spin it up and let's check it out. All right, so the app's launching. It's hitting the Hacker News API. It's now going to the Text Analytics API. Oh, and there we go. Check that out. So now, for each story, I get a little emoji that appears right next to it. So now when I wake up in the morning, I see this one, Life in the Spanish City that banned cars. I guess banning cars is a bad thing. I'm not going to read that. I'm going to skip over that, and let's see, do we have any happy? Okay. What made your favorite manager? Okay. Feel good stories. I'm going to read that one in the morning, and then start my day off on the right foot. So with just a couple clicks on the Azure portal, just a couple lines of code, we literally added machine learning to our app. Didn't have to create a model, didn't have to train anything, didn't have to hire a team of experts and pay them millions of dollars. It's literally that easy to do with machine learning as a service. So again, that final completed version of that app with all the best practices, feel free to check it out. It's at that link below. If you haven't gotten a chance to yet, make sure to grab that link and browse to it, add it to your bookmarks, take a picture, whatever. But what I want to challenge you with over the next couple weeks, start thinking about those scenarios where we can use these. You know, we all have things in our life that maybe we don't like that we can take advantage of all these tools. You know, or maybe you work at a company that has sensitive information, financial data, health records. You can add your face to two-factor authentication. Companies are already doing this. And so, yeah, as you're going around about the next couple weeks, start thinking about, well, shoot, like I could make that better. And we're not trying to change the world, but these little incremental changes make our lives just that much better, super easy to do with just a couple lines of code. Thank you. Cool, so we have some time. I know we had a great question earlier. What other questions do you have? Yeah.
All the services available to Australia East, or are there some that are only available in other states?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. If we come up after, I know the landing page we can go to. Or maybe once the questions die down, I can pull it up for everybody else and we can stay a little later and check it out. But yeah, I know all of them are available. There we go. All of them are available, and yeah, maybe one you have to hit a data center on the west coast of the US, but obviously it'd be better for us here in Australia if we could use the Australia East. So that's a good question. Yeah, let's check that out. What other questions do you have? All right, well, we're dreaming up some more questions. Let's see if we can find out that list of data centers. Let's see. Azure Data Center Resource List. Let's see how my Google foo is working today. Azure products by region, that sounds good. Let's select all of them, why not? And what do you think? Maybe text analytics, all right. You know what, let's try and zoom out a little bit. Maybe cognitive services, so we can see all of them. All right, so, let's see, make this a little bit bigger. So Australia East is here. And we have this column here that says non-regional. So there's no dependency on a specific Azure region. Okay, so those count. So we're talking, let's see, let's make this a little bit bigger for all of us. So it looks like all the Bing APIs are available. And okay, cool. So computer vision, looks like this is, I think, let's just make sure. It looks like you got Scrog when I zoomed in. Okay, so these are Australia's southeast. So even better for us here in Sydney. Cool. So yeah, it looks like computer vision, Australia Southeast. Yeah, I don't really see one where it's in any other data center, not here. So looks like we're good to go. Great question. So the question is, are the inputs stored? And just to make sure I understand you, so like when I uploaded those headlines just now, are those saved somewhere? And if I remember correctly, I think they do keep them just to help train the model. So as we're using it, they're leveraging the data to make the models better. But there are certain things that don't get out. So like when we do the facial recognition, you know, when I uploaded my face, that stays in my sandbox. You know, if somebody else here spun up a face API resource, they wouldn't be able to take a picture of me and be able to map it to me because that's kind of sandboxed to me. So yeah, they do add those into the models. I'm not sure how long they hang on to them. There is something about that in the user agreement when you sign up. So I'm sure we can dig in there and see if it's, I don't know, 30 days or whatever we agree to. But yeah, good question. Definitely something to be wary of if there's anything you don't necessarily want to get compromised. Please.
Are there any specific points of differentiation between Azure Compute Services and the other cloud providers, like some of the Azure that's better than other ones?
Honestly, not really that I'm aware of. That's kind of why I throw both of them in here. I don't know off the top of my head. Does anybody know if AWS has something similar? Me neither. But yeah, from my experience, I get similar results on both. It's kind of more just, are you already using Azure? Well, you can use Azure's cognitive services. Are you already using Google Cloud? Well, you can leverage their, and that way you don't have to have multiple subscriptions hanging around. But yeah, at the end of the day, they've really just commoditized it. And the way I look at it, really cloud in general, it's all going in the same direction. You know, if us at Microsoft, we build a data center, well, guess what? A couple weeks later, AWS and Google announce a data center in the same place. So it's kind of, we're all racing to the same common goal. And kind of what I found in general is just use whichever one you're comfortable with. You know, maybe you prefer the Microsoft stack, go with Azure. Maybe you don't, so you don't. But yeah, in my experience, pretty much same. Good question. Sure.
Are there open source projects running by Microsoft related to this cognitive services where anybody can just contribute?
Oh, the cognitive services open source.
Not cognitive services, but are there some open source projects which are using cognitive services?
I mean, you got my sweet demo apps. If you want to contribute to those, I'll bring in your pull request. Let me see if this one. There's this really cool app that a team at Microsoft made, and I'm not sure if it's open source or not. But this one heavily leverages the cognitive services, and I didn't see it in that GitHub search just now, but we'll let that video run in the background. But this one's pretty cool, just to give you kind of some more ideas about what you can do with these. This was created by one of our developers at Microsoft who's actually blind, incredibly smart guy, incredibly nice guy, and he made this app for iOS, Android. You can actually download it from the stores if you want to check it out, basically to help him see the world around him. So it's leveraging these cognitive services to identify things like reading this text, help him figure out the conference rooms he's going to. And what's also cool is, the demos we did today, it was a lot of taking pictures, uploading, but you can actually do live video streams. So you can actually have it stream and get those updates in real time too, which is pretty amazing. So, well, I guess to answer your question, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but
Like I've read about Project Wollongong, but I'm not much aware of what's going on inside that, and if anybody from outside wants to contribute to it.
what's that project about?
Project Wollongong, as far as I have read, it's about different places, and you just tag the places and give a rating to that place, how good that place is, or how bad that maybe a restaurant or something, and then Microsoft collects the data about it, and then, yeah, on a high level.
Okay,
But if
cool.
you search for Project Wollongong, you will see that.
Right on. Yeah, I tell you, if you want to shoot me a message, either Twitter or email, you got my contact info. I can start asking around internally and see if we can find a project to help you guys jump into it. Oh yeah.
Do you know if there's any plans to add 3D facial recognition? So taking advantage of the 3D facial recognition of the iPhone 10?
Oh, leveraging that. I don't know. And we saw there's those secret labs projects that they don't even tell us about. So maybe. But yeah, so for something like that, that'll be way more secure than just uploading the photo like we talked about. It's pretty easy to spoof a photo. Let's make sure we're not, okay, still got time. So if you can use that, go for it. The only downside is not everybody has that. So like, yeah, I've got the iPhone 10, but how many folks in here have iPhone 10? There you go. So it's kind of one of those technologies that it's amazing. It works great. That security level, what's it, like one in a million chance that you have a false positive. And so we can leverage it. It's just it hasn't expanded out wide enough for the community yet for really to make it worth your while outside of essentially logging into the phone or entering passwords. But no, I don't know, but that would be really cool.
Is not the iPhone 10 facial recognition similar to Windows Hello with the 3D webcams from Intel?
I mean, Windows Hello, I know, well, again, I'm no no machine learning expert, but I know, I had a laptop that just used the camera for Windows Hello. It didn't have any depth sensing like the iPhone 10 does. And that worked with Windows Hello?
Because Windows Hello would only work with they call that 3D webcam, and Intel is providing the sensor, so there's also multiple.
Ah.
That does not work with a standard webcam.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was based on the Kinect.
Okay. Yeah, okay, no, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, they essentially reduced the size of the Kinect.
And Intel released a model that is integrated in some laptops.
Cool. So just to repeat it for the folks watching on the video, we're saying there's also Windows Hello using depth sensing cameras, kind of leveraging the Microsoft Kinect technology. So keep an eye out for those if you want to make sure you have that layer of security for your PC and your PC apps too. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. Hope I'll see you around and have a great night.